Give me power to move. I need more power to move myself, to move people, to move things. I need power to move things around me. This morning, I want to share this call for you, this call for me. I mean, how can I have more power? How can I do this thing? Good day, good day, good day, good day. Good morning to most of us here in America. A lot of you are listening all over the world. I say that and I kind of like think to myself, wow, man, we've been doing this a while. We have some almost 30,000 followers, and we have a really good following on this show. And I think sometimes that it's just hard to believe that, we have people in different time zones and all over the world. And I want to thank Ezra and a lot of you followers in Africa and all over, it's just so many cool things have come from this Wired Differently mindset, mission, movement, and ministry. And I say to myself, why do I do this? Why are we doing things like this? Why is this so important to me? Well, it's important to me because I believe it's a calling of mine from God to you. And before I tell this story this morning and I kind of talk about this power, give me power, I really feel like it's important that you understand that the message behind this show, this morning commitment, this daily commitment, is really about endurance. I think that if I have one successful trait in my body that has created multiple success components in my life, it's that the endurance that has been instilled in me. And the show is something, all the shows aren't great. I think they're good, but they're not always. It's always one that's maybe a little better than the other, speaks differently to somebody else. And people listen and then they go away and then they come back and they say, oh, he's still doing it, right? One day I'll have, 500 views. The next day I'll have over thousands of views. And, it's just kind of moving and moving. It's slowly inching its way up. And I try not to measure it by listens because I think that it's interesting to understand that people say they listen, but they don't always listen to all of them, obviously. But what they do listen to is the fact is that they heard it a year ago or they heard it 2 years ago. And all of a sudden I pop up on the Facebook and they're like, oh, he's still doing it. He hasn't fallen out. He hasn't given up on God. He hasn't given up on this 4 o'clock in the morning study and getting up and doing a live show. He's still doing it. I mean, I think that the message that I want you to take from this and the message that I want you to hear from the entire scope of the Wired Differently experience show is that endurance is probably the most biblical principle that I'm going to prepare for you or present to you over time. I just want to be the endurance guy. 59, and I remember thinking when I was in my 20s, oh, I'm gonna outlast that guy. I'm gonna still be doing it when they're doing it. I know I'm failing here and I'm failing here, but I'm gonna come back here, and people are gonna chide me here and they're gonna chide me here. But I'm just telling you, as long as I stay on the path of goodness, my record will be clean. My story and my past and my message will be that of a younger Christian, stayed a Christian, followed Christian, did business, did these things through life. Not just a period. There were some bumps and blips, but man, he never really lost faith. He never really stopped preaching the word. He never stopped trying to live the word. He never, and so what I want you to know is I see a lot of followers on here listening. Like, so I'm going to set this up. Give me power to move. I was really at a loss of a title for this story this morning, but I thought, oh Lord, man, give me power to move. What is the power to move? How am I going to teach on Psalms 59:16 today? Because it kind of caught me flat-footed. I'm like, oh, you're going to give me that one? That one. Yeah, okay. I don't like the Psalms and the Old Testaments and stuff. Give me the New Testament. Give me the meat, baby. Give me power to move. And so the story I'm going to just kind of tell you today, I'm just going to meander my way to it because I was, I don't want to call it handicapped, but this morning I was up early and I had my coffee and I was in the living room. I'm in Angola, Indiana. I get a nice fire. I should have put the picture up of the fire I had this morning. And I was studying and going through, and I'm like, man, God, I don't know about this verse. What are you going to bring to me? And I'm like, you got to do it. You got to do it. And so here we are, and I'm just kind of stumbling around trying to find my place in this message. And you got to understand, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. My family's kind of weird. We're up early. We stay up late, and we make donuts and restaurants, and we do payroll, and we have all these kind of companies and everything. And it's like 5:30 in the morning. And I'm in the throes of my study, and I hear this. I mean, it's like early, like I'm in my underwear studying and coffee and the fire. And I'm like, And I'm like, oh man, was that somebody? And I hear it again. And I look in the window and it's my brother, man. I mean, like, and I haven't seen him in a while. And he's got this full on beard. And I didn't know if it was some creeper or what it was, but it's my brother. I'm like, oh man. So I go open the door, come on in, bro. And so he comes on in and he sits down and we just start talking about brother stuff. We talked about brother stuff. We talked about pain. We talked about family. We talked about donuts. We talked about everything but my lesson and my study time. And I kept thinking to myself, you got to get him out of here because you got to study. And I thought, no, I don't. God will deliver something to me, and I want to be with my brother. So I just had the most wonderful time with my brother this morning at 5:30 in the morning. And I think my brother inspired me with this, give me power to move, because I kind of tied it in, and I was thinking, what did my brother do for me this morning? And I kind of went back to a quote I heard from Lou Holtz on some of this other stuff I was watching and studying. And he says, don't tell people your problems. And I'm like, oh gosh, I guess, okay, what do you got with that? And then he says, don't tell people your problems, because I want you to understand one thing. You tell people your problems, and here's what's going on. He says, you tell people their problems, and 90% of the people who hear your problems don't care. And he said, this is where he gets me. And he says, the other 10% are glad you have those problems. And so like I was teaching, thinking about that comment and what I was going to do with that day, this morning. And then my brother knocks on the window, comes on in, he sits down, and he just sits there. He makes a cup of coffee and he puts his feet up, and we're just chilling. And somehow he asked me some questions, and I worked into him to some of my problems. And just want you to hear the story because I love my brother so much. And I kept thinking and at the end, my brother leaves and he listens to all the challenges I had in my businesses, including the donut shop, which he's running. And he listened. And I just kept thinking, you know what? He never told me his problems, and he just listened to mine, and he offered help. And I just kept thinking, you know what, Lou, you're wrong. 1%, my brother knocked on the window to hear my problems. And he gave me power. He was there for me this morning. And I was driving to the studio, and I didn't really quite have anything quite put together today for this morning. And I remember thinking, you know what, man? you just say one thing all morning, you know, there are people out there that care. But the one that really, 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 really cares on the low down all the time is God. And I started studying this verse. Psalms 59:16 is written by David in Psalms. And yeah, I'm not a big Psalms guy, and I get forced to do this because I commit to a lesson every speech or message to you every morning, which is given to me through my study verses. And I get it in the morning at 4 o'clock or so, and then I have something in my head and I tie them all together. And you can see the product of that happening right now. But Psalms 59:16 was given to me. But I will sing of your strength in the morning. I will sing of your love, for you are my fortress. And so this whole idea of strength and power comes through God. Strength and power comes through relationships in this world. Strength and power always comes through something outside of you in many, many cases. I mean, we can always take it to a level of some greatness with our own physical hands and our own doing. But anytime we want to scale any of our companies, anytime we want to scale anything in our life, anytime we want to take something bigger and better and faster and stronger and more of everything that's good, it takes other people. It takes other resources. I learned that a long time ago, that I could only do so much, could only rise to a certain level. But if I wanted to really capture the big picture, I wanted to do the big things, or I wanted to be successful on the regular, I had to learn to trust and give and take a fortress in other people's gifts beyond mine. And so I will tell you right now that the donut capital of the world would never even come close to being what it is without my brother. Never. Couldn't happen. God is that resource beyond us. And when he brings us Psalm 59:16, this is David speaking to us, and he says, but I will sing of your strength, comma, in the morning, then I will sing of your love, for you are my fortress. And I'm like, man, God, what has that got to do with power? What does that got to do with everything that's going on? And so I start to dive into this a little bit, and lo and behold, there's always the story, then there's the story before the story, and I'm digging into this, and King David writes the Psalms before he's actually a king. I don't know if many of you knew that, but King David was not the king when he wrote Psalms. I'm like, I thought that was very interesting. So what's going on in King David's life that would make him write this distressful, but I will sing of your strength. Well, something he's got strength. In the morning, I will sing of your love. Like, what's happening from the night to the morning? For you are my fortress. He's calling, he's pleading, he's asking God for strength. He's asking God for power because something is out of his control. I mean, do you know that story all too often? So what was going on in David's mind? What was David singing praise for, worried about? What was the concern of David at this moment? So I dig into this, and it's actually 1 Samuel 17. That's actually, I got it right here. 1 Samuel 19, 11 through 18. See, King Saul was the king at the time David was rising in power. And King Saul was nervous about David and his power and all the people liking him and loving him. And he was worried about the growth. And he had actually known that God had chosen David to become king at some point because King Saul was losing favor with his people. Well, King Saul was nervous about all this. And so King Saul, on multiple times, including this particular time and moment in this verse of Psalms 59:16, he was seeking David to murder him, to kill him dead. Multiple attempts on David's life by King Saul. Well, why was King David, let's keep going. So why was King David rising to power? What had happened in what had happened in David's life that he would rise to power? So David was the son of Jesse. Jesse had multiple sons, and the Philistines were wreaking havoc on the Israel people again, trying to take over Israel. Israel is always the back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We talk about that often. Israel still to this day is in trouble again, right? Philistines were on the attack. They had a bigger army. They had a giant by the name of Goliath. Well, David's brothers were on the front lines of the Israel force. The Israel force were being dominated, and they were scared of the Philistines and their armies, and particularly one warrior they had over there by the name of Goliath. Goliath was presumably a 9-foot tall giant. He was the biggest, baddest warrior the world had ever seen. And Goliath, for some 40 days, was trouncing around, tempting any warrior to come out from the Israel side to take him on in a one-on-one cage match. I mean, they were going to go at it in the round circle, and they were going to fight to the death. And the beauty of the cage match was that if you would take on Goliath, it would be one-on-one, and whoever lived would be the winner, and it would spare all the deaths of the soldiers on either side, because they wouldn't be doing combat and spearing and stabbing each other and all that going on. They wouldn't have all the lives dying back and forth. Why not just take your best on Israel's best? So the Philistines' best was Goliath. He's saying, come on, bring me your best, somebody, for 40 days. We can end this war right now. If you beat me, you win, and we'll give up all the land, and everything's going on. And King Saul was scared, and Jesse's sons, David's brothers, were scared. All the warriors were scared. They were hunkered down. And sure enough, old David comes meandering up the hillside, and he sees the landscape as he was bringing his brothers some food. Davis, just a meek shepherd, looks out over the land, and he sees and surveys the situation and sees this large Goliath tromping around, taunting all of the warriors on the Israel side. David steps up, a small man, and says, I'll take on Goliath. Can you imagine the shock of the Israel captains and soldiers that someone was actually going to take on Goliath and possibly end this war for them? David felt like it was just another day. David felt like God had always taken him through the tough times, storms and waters and turbulence, and it always saved the sheep. God had always came through, and he pronounced to Goliath, he pronounced to the Israel army, he pronounced to his brothers, he pronounced to the whole world and said, I have faith in God. God has always delivered me. God is on this side of this war. I will take on Goliath. I love this story because I had studied it a little more today, and the things that came to me that were very interesting is that David was confident in the story from the time he went to the hill to feed his brothers, to the time he surveyed the land, to the time he found out that it was a simple battle could end all this BS that's been going on all these years. It just seems simple. Look, I'll just do it. Somebody just has to do it. It's not really that I have to be good or bad. It's just that God is here with me. God wants this to end. God has given me the strength to end this. It's not that I'm a bigger person or I'm stronger. It's the fact that I am physically less than anything on that side. And the point of the matter is this: somebody's got to do it, right? Somebody's just got to step up and say, hey, man, like, let's go. I have God on my side. I want to end this. And so simply as it is, they're saying, okay, man, go out there, David, give it your best. And you can see them just kind of standing back and like, oh, man, this kid is pretty cocky. I don't know how he's going to do this. 9-foot soldier with muscles and armor all over him. And he's got some some sandals on and a cloth, and he smells like, a shepherd, right? And what's he gonna do? Stink him to death? I mean, how is this gonna work? I mean, what is gonna happen? And so David just calmly looks around. He says, "Okay, let's go." I mean, can you just see it? Like, all these Avenger movies and all this, and they're always joking about like killing people and how darts and arrows are flying and flames and cars are flying all over. And then they're making jokes about how they're gonna fix the next thing as they're about ready to get killed. It's just all a comedy. And I gotta just see David in that situation. You're like, man, God said he's going to take care of me. God said he would. This will be fun. And, just watch this, stand back. I mean, here's what I'm going to do. And they're like, what's he going to do? So all he does is like, he bends over and he picks up his slingshot. And I think the story goes, he picks up 4 or 5 round pebbles, places them in his holster or whatever you call the pebble holder for a slingshot shooter. He puts the pebble in the slingshot, and Goliath comes charging in a kind of a funny cadence and laughing at the little man. And David takes the slingshot and whips it around. And as David makes his approach, Goliath makes his approach, and the pebble comes out of the slingshot like nobody's business. It's the most perfect shot ever created, right? Perfect shot, a divine shot right to the forehead of a 9-foot giant with the velocity of, who knows, maybe 100 miles an hour. I don't think it mattered because it was dead on. And here's the thing that I didn't know about the story at my research this morning is David fired that pebble. First shot, dropped Goliath down on the ground. But that only dazed Goliath. He was wiggling around on the ground, concussed probably, bleeding from the forehead, wondering what happened. But David pounced upon Goliath and finished the business on Goliath with Goliath's sword. That's the story of David and Goliath. That is the ascension of David that went through Goliath, that rose to the ranks of King Saul, learning to love David at first and praising him and lifting him up and giving him some power. And then all of a sudden, King Saul started to lose favorability and David became more powerful and more powerful. But all along, David stayed humble. David stayed honorous. He never jided King Saul. King Saul still didn't like it because he knew David would be the successor. King Saul then seeks to murder David. Matter of fact, on multiple occasions, David had the opportunity to kill King Saul in retaliation of him being tried to be murdered. I find all this interesting. I find this all very interesting. Finally, King Saul passes, and David takes the kingdomship and becomes the king of Israel and has a wonderful reign. Give me power to move. So when I think about this verse, and at first I'm stymied a little bit, but I will sing of your strength. In the morning, I will sing of your love. For you are my fortress. You give me power. This was David crying out before he had become king. This is David crying out to God, how can I do this? The king, the president of the country, the leader of the free world, the most powerful man in the planet at that time, wanted him murdered. It's pretty stressful when you think about something like that. And I think the story here is about us to understand is, where do we go when we're like David? Where do we go when we're being trying to be murdered? Where do we go when someone's trying to kill us? How do we find power to move forward? How do we find power to move through the day? How do we find power to move our businesses? How do we find power to move our families? How do we just sometimes find power to get out of bed? King David was experiencing this at the highest power. He did all these things, and here he is. He's going to be murdered by the king after he had delivered the country on multiple times and was selected by God. Oh God, why are you having the king that you asked me to help? Why is he going to murder me? Now, I am only metaphorically tying stressful opportunities for you to the word murder or being killed. I mean, very few of us have had attacks on our lives. I think God used this because it's probably the most stressful thing that you could have happen in your life. I mean, somebody's trying to kill you. You know, you can't help but think of the Donald Trump who's moving around, you know, selling French fries and burgers and sticking his head out that drive-through window, and he knows people are trying to take pot shots at him all the time. I mean, the most stressful thing in the world. And I think that's why God gave us this scenario. I think this is why he gave us this whole David story. I think because we need power to move through life. And I wanted to share this verse with you. I wanted to share where I find my power when I'm trying to be murdered, meaning that people do try to hurt me. People do try to hurt other people, right? Lou Holtz was joking about it, but he wasn't joking about it because it makes sense. 90% of the people don't care about your problems, but the other 10% like seeing your problems. For some reason, it makes them feel better that you're having problems. It makes their life seem better when they see someone else having problems in a different way or a worse way more than that. And if you're being, at least my life isn't like that. I didn't deserve that. I'm living better than that. I mean, they're trying to kill him. I'm doing better. That's what he gets, right? That kind of mentality of the people in this world. And so what I want to just talk to you about today is, where do I draw my power? Where do you draw your power? Where did David, before he became king, draw his power? And this is what I have for you. But I will sing, right? Story, verse, lesson. But I will sing of your strength in the morning. I will sing of your love, for you are my fortress. So here's what's going on here. I want you to pull on these three things. This is where we draw power. This is where King David drew his power. Number one, I want you to understand reliance. All of our power, all of our greatness, all of our success, all of our worldly ability to scale, to become better at our craft, to become better at our person, to become better at anything around us, we have to have a strict reliance on God's strength. God's strength is where we get our strength, and the word reliance is our ability to rely on God. David always relied on God. There is no way that a 5'8", 155-pound shepherd is going to manhandle a 9-foot giant. It's just not going to happen. You just pick him up, move him around, he'll throw him in a rock. I've seen this. It's pretty easy. But David relied on God's strength. He didn't rely on his own strength. He relied on God's resilience, reliance on God, right? Number one, we have to rely on God's strength. So the key for us to have power is to rely on God's strength. Number two, daily. In this verse, it says, but I will sing of your strength, right? There's relying on God's strength. And then in the morning, I will sing of your love. So in the morning is this process. We go back to my story in the morning. Go back to David's quote in Psalms 59:16. Every morning, I rely on God. Every morning, I'm doing my reps. I'm praying to God. I'm doing my study. I'm doing the show. And I hear a knock on the door. On my daily, my brother shows up. because he knew that was my daily, right? He was the person I needed to lift me up this morning because he knew my daily routine. He's just not going to go walk around and knock on anybody random door at 4:35 in the morning because he knew that that's what I do. He knew my daily, right? My daily is with God. My daily is predictable. My daily is reliance on the strength of God and his word. And number 3, refuge. For you are my fortress. The refuge is a safety place. Maybe my brother needed refuge and he needed to talk to me, but he quickly shifted and listened into my situation and my problems, and I love him for that. I owe you, bro. My refuge is God. He maybe came to me for some refuge. I get to him for refuge, right? These relationships and other people and God are what propel us to be greater in things in our life. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful story. There's something in there for everybody. And I just want you to know that I want you to rely on God's strength for your power. I want you to do it daily in praise and remembrance of God. And I want you to have refuge in all that you do in God, knowing that he will always be there for you in all of your wacky moves. I love you guys. It was a great day. I love the story. I love David. I love the power of it all. I want you guys to have a great day, and I'll be right back. Everybody, get to Wired Differently, wireddifferently.com. I love Wired Differently, and we're talking about my brother this morning. I noticed, Shane, that you bought like 2 sweatshirts the other day it came across, so thank you for that. Hey, come on, match my brother. Get wireddifferently.com. Use the promo code WIRED15, and you get another 15% off of anything you get there. It's already cheap to start with, so come on. Why not wear God on your person? Why do you want to wear Adidas, Champion, Nike, who knows what everything else you're wearing? Come on, North Face. Look, why don't you wear God, right? God is a great thing to put on you to start your day and to support this mindset, mission, movement, and a ministry. I'll see you tomorrow. The endurance goes on.